are now streaming live on YouTube.
We are still waiting for Todd Stone and Jim Roth.
Do we wait or should we start on the appointed time?
Yeah, we still have about a minute and a half to.
Francis, I don't think Jim's gonna make it. He's traveling and he just texted me.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Francis, without Jim here, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we have a quorum for three, with three. And it doesn't look like there's anything that requires a super majority, so we should be okay. I have 3 o'clock, Mr. Chair.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the OCEDT meeting for the month of that we're in here in September. But before we call the meeting to order, I'm going to have Craig Freeman, if you would, give us some instructions. So Craig, if you would, give us the instructions and then we'll be ready to open up the meeting and do some business.
Sure, I'd be glad to. So as we start the meeting, the trustees, the secretary, and municipal counselor will remain unmuted during the meeting, but any other participants or staff that are going to be in the meeting or observing the meeting need to remain on mute until recognized by the chairman or the manager. If you're calling into the meeting and you need to mute or unmute, you can use *6. If the video conference is disconnected at any time during the meeting will be stopped and reconvened once the connection is restored. If communication is unable to be restored within 15 minutes, and if communications cannot be restored, the meeting will reconvene on September 28th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Anyone wishing to speak about an item or to be included in the citizens to be heard portion at the end of the meeting should call 405-297-2245, or you can text 405-219-7987, or another option is to email cityclerk@okc.gov. So it's cityclerk, one word, @okc.gov. Please submit your request now to avoid receipt of your request after the item has been considered. The agenda and attachments are available online at okc.gov.
Thank you, Craig. With that being accomplished, let's call the meeting to order. And the first item of business on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the August 18th, 2020 Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting. Are there any questions on the minutes? And not seeing them, can I have a motion to approve and a second?
I will second it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, it's spinning. Just give it a second here.
Trustee Hooper, do you have your buttons?
No, I do not.
Will you press escape on your keyboard or select your Chrome button at the bottom?
I did, and then I always have this problem. Okay.
Thank you.
I think we're ready to, we had it approved. Yes, there we go. Thank you all. Next up is to ratify the claims for the OCEDT department. And I have a motion and a second, if there are no questions. Thank you. Next on our agenda are items for individual consideration. And item A, Craig, if you would share that with the trustees, and we'll see what action they want to take.
Yes, sir. This item is the economic development agreement with Barkay Dog Park, OKC LLC, and it is for the development financing support for the Barkay Dog Park. This agreement, previously, the trust and the council have approved the allocation of funding of $750,000 for this project through TIF2 funding. And now the project is coming back before us with the economic development agreement. The first $150,000 will be provided to the developer upon documentation of $5.4 million in project costs. And then after that, it'll be on a reimbursement basis, not to exceed the $750,000. And we'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Craig? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept. And it passes. Next on our agenda, Craig, is the information involved in the Steel Yard residential and commercial building project.
Yes, sir. This project, this is just an addendum to the Steel Yard residential and commercial building project. Wiley Williams, one of our deputy municipal counselors, is on the line and will give us just a summary of the changes that were requested.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
This was a request by the developer of the Steel Yard project to allow the increment that we're paying to them over the life of the TIF to be assigned to its parent company. And the original agreement didn't allow for that. It only allowed for an assignment to a primary lender. And but the primary lender has no interest in asking for the increment to be assigned to it. But so the developer has asked if we would allow it to assign its increment, its incentive payment to its parent company. And that's what this addendum does. It is as simple as that. And it'll be retroactive to July 1 of this current fiscal year.
Thank you, Wally. Any questions from any of the trustees? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the addendum. And it is passed. Next up involves the First National Hotel Project. Craig, if you would.
Yes, sir. This item is a joint resolution with the Economic Development Trust and the city, and it provides for the Economic Development Agreement and some amendments to the agreements that we've had. And we've already approved all the allocations. Council's authorized the issuance of debt. Brent Bryant is on the line, our finance director, and will just give us a summary of the items of this item and what's being requested here.
Good afternoon. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history about the First National Development Center. In 2016, the City Council approved the creation of TIF District number 10. We carved that out of the downtown TIF District number 2. The goal was to redevelop the First National Center. Subsequent to that, in 2017, the City Council authorized the allocation of $40 million of ad valorem taxes plus an additional $5 million in sales tax to support the project. The project consists of 3 different components: a parking garage with approximately 700 spaces, a residences of 193 units, and a hotel development of 146 rooms. In total, it's about $287 million in total development costs. And to date, the developer has spent approximately $75 million on the project. In 2017, the first thing that we did, they wanted to start work on the construction of the garage, and we entered into an agreement with NESC FNC Garage LLC for a total of $17 million, of which $14 million is for ad valorem and $3 million in sales tax. The garage provided that in the event of a leveraged lender on the garage opted not to continue with the primary project loan, the trust would enter into a loan agreement and take that loan out. And in that, and if that did not occur, the increment that was generated would be provided to the developer to support the redevelopment of the garage part component. Today, what we're seeking to do is to do two things. The developer has a change in some of the ownership. They've added a third partner, and we need to recognize and approve that ownership in the parent developer. In addition to that, we need to confirm that the principals of the parent developer will guarantee, in the event the city takes out any of the debt on this project, takes the loan out, that they would provide a guarantee similar to what they're providing on the hotel project. So that's what we're seeking for you to do on the garage component. As it relates to the hotel and the apartments, historically those have been, originally we had those bundled up in what we call the tower project. Initially the developer was going to get financing, and the financing was going to be for the two together, but that fell through. So as a result of that, they've come back, they've identified funding for the hotel aspect of it, and they've identified additional funding for the residents. And so what we're looking to do, back in 19, the trust and the city council approved the economic development agreement where we provide up to $26 million in ad valorem and $2 million in sales tax. The way the city was going to provide the support for this project is we were going to loan $25.5 million to the project to support it. Subsequent to that though, and we went through an extensive RFP, and we selected JP Morgan. And again, back in 2019, this body approved the authorization of the debt, as did the city council. Today, then in summer of this past summer, the developer identified that they had found a new funding source, Tinker Federal Credit Union, to fund the loan for the apartments. And with that, we went back to JP Morgan and asked them, will you still meet, or will you still honor your original proposal, which they did. What we have today though, we need to provide you that the loan is no longer $25.5 million. It will only be $24,550,000. And the reason being, we have approximately $450,000 of TIF funds on hand that we're going to use to support it. So at the end of the day, only $25 million will go to the project. This loan will be secured by a minimum annual tax payment on the property and personal guarantees of the principals of the parent developer. In addition to that, the sales tax that's generated from the hotel, along with the property taxes, will be provided as a credit towards the minimum annual tax payment, and then the principals will have to make up the difference. The trust will be charging the developer a fee above and beyond our borrowing costs with JP Morgan, and we'll utilize that. Those funds will go into a debt service reserve fund. Of the $25 million that we are loaning the project, the first $2.885 million will go into a debt service reserve fund. This is to mitigate risk for the city and the trust. And then as ad valorem revenues each year come in for the residents, those funds will also go into the reserve fund to continue to grow the reserve fund to where it is 2 times the maximum annual debt service, or $5.7 million. In addition, the interest rate spread that we will charge above and beyond our borrowing cost that we charge the developer will also be added to the reserve fund each year. Once we get to $5.7 million in the reserve fund, the developer any funds above that will be used to pay down additional principal on the debt. It's similar to making an extra payment on your house payment or something like that.
Brent,
So-
do you have extra slides to share?
No, not really.
Okay.
What we're seeking today to do is two things as relates to the hotel EDA amendment. And they are the EDA, initially, the EDA that we had was with the tower. Now we're carving out the residents because we're only supporting the hotel. And so we're eliminating the residents out of as a co-borrow. In addition to that, we're only providing the incentive to be made to the hotel. You can go to the next slide now. In addition to that, what we're seeking your approval today is approval of all the documents needed to close the $24.5 million incentive loan with JP Morgan Chase. Again, this body approved the financing back in March of 2019. And this also authorizes the city and trust officials to execute the documents necessary for closing. And with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Brent, how big is that loan with Tinker Credit Union?
It's approximately $40 million.
Okay, the residential portion can fund that loan payment?
The residential will not support all of it. We believe that by year 10 on this deal, excuse me, by year 10, we will have the amount of money in the reserve fund and the amount that we actually owe on the debt will be equal. And then we think at that point in time, we'll be able to just pay it off.
Okay.
Should we need additional funds, Brent, how do they, where do we find them?
What we would do, the way it would work in the event that, let's say they did not make the minimum tax payment, we would initially, if the minimum tax payment was not made, we would draw on the reserve fund. If the reserve, then at that point in time, it would trigger for us to go to the two guarantors and seek for them to replenish the reserve funds. And Wiley can get at all of the legal ramifications of that, but that's essentially what we would do. One thing that I would stress, though, is that what's unique about this structure is we have a loan with them and they're obligated to pay us a certain amount. And and what we have that most creditors don't have is we have a covenant on the deed of the property that says they will pay these taxes or pay this amount, which is the equivalent of what their annual mortgage payment is essentially. And if they don't, and that's something that gives us security in the asset, and it protects us in the event that they do not pay.
Brent, you're talking there, evidently the guarantors have the willingness to pay. Do they have the ability to pay? Should that be required?
I have reviewed the financials for both Gary Brooks and Charlie Nicholas as of June 30, and they have adequate resources to pay. And they have adequate properties that are still providing good cash flow and that are would provide adequate cash to support this project.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions from the trustees? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept this approach. And then a second. And we so have. And it passed. Thank you. Thank you, trustees. Next, on our agenda, the general manager reports. You have the general manager reports for your perusal after the conclusion of the meeting. That brings us to comments from staff. Do any of the staff have any comments that they would like to share with us? Hearing none. Trustees, any trustee with any questions or comments?
No.
Beginning, hearing none. Have any citizens indicated that they would like to be heard at this time?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you, Francis. We're not aware of any citizens. Therefore, that concludes the business for the trust. We are adjourned. Thank you for your involvement.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.